But right now I have an expert opinion to join me. We have Paul Gregutt. He is blogging daily at PaulGregutt.wmv. He is also the author of Washington Wines and Wineries, The Essential Guide. He is a columnist for Seattle Times, and he is the Northwest editor for Wine Enthusiast magazine. Paul, welcome to the Wine Crush.
Well, thank you, Laura. It's very nice to be back with you.
It is nice to have you back on air. It is fun. We've been talking all morning so on and off about the fact that today's show is kind of about those things that kind of make you go, make you wonder strange things in the wine business. It all started because they're playing Christmas music before Thanksgiving, and my train of thought has just headed down that merry trail since then.
Well, there are certainly plenty of strange things in the wine business.
Without a doubt. Well, today I had introduced our listeners to the fact that the Top 100 from the Wine Spectator has come out, and that Columbia Crest Reserve Cabernet is indeed the #1 wine in the world from their ranking publication. So I know that you had recently done a blog on it, and I'd love to get your impressions on it.
Yeah, well, I did a couple of blogs on it, but and so did a lot of other people, and I think that, I speak for the general consensus in Washington when I say that people are thrilled that a Washington wine was chosen as the #1 wine of the year. I mean, what's not to like about that? And beyond that, Columbia Crest is the largest producer in the state, and they are also generally recognized as a superb value producer. So all of that is on the plus side.
Oh, without a doubt. When you look at it, in fact, if you looked at the Top 100, you have the Columbia Crest Reserve Cab in there. You have the Chateau Ste. Michelle Canoe Ridge Cabernet, and then also they have the Spring Valley that they're behind as well. So that's got to make Washington State producers stand up and notice.
Yeah, there were there were 9 Washington wines altogether on that list. The 3 you mentioned, there were 2 from a company called Precept Brands, and they do the house wine. I'm sure you've seen it.
Absolutely. They do Pine and Post as well and do a nice job with it.
They do quite a few, but they're best known, I think, for the house wine, and they had that wine on the Syrah on there, and also the Waterbrook. So that's 5 of the 9 wines from 2 of the really big hitters in the state.
Well, obviously, you wrote the book on the essential wines of Washington State, and I know that everyone up there is ecstatic about the wines being represented. But do you feel like there is some ulterior motive in that? Do you think that the whole ranking was a little bit skewed? Would you have picked another wine?
Well, I, in fact, have. In 2 respects, the magazine that I write for, which is Wine Enthusiast, also publishes their Top 100 list. In fact, they have several. They have the Top 100 Values, the Top 100 Cellar Selections, and the Top 100 of the Year. And Washington is extremely well represented on all of those lists. In addition, I have my own personal Top 100, which is exclusively Washington wines. And that will be published in the Seattle Times this coming Sunday. And I'll put it up on my blog on next Monday so that everybody can log on and find it. And that's my pick for the top 100 wines that came out in Washington State in the last year.
Well, where did the Columbia Crest Reserve Cab fall in that?
That particular wine was not on the list.
It's always fun to make this divergent, and the last thing I want to do is kind of go back and forth, obviously, in being involved with a different magazine. But I've got to ask the pointed question. How much of this do you think is affected by ad revenue and ads that are taken out in the magazine?
I can't speak for anything except the magazine I write for.
Right.
I do not write for the Wine Spectator, and it would be inappropriate for me to speculate. However, if you look at the 9 wines that are on the list, 5 of them are from the two of the 3 biggest wine companies in the state. Now, that has something to do with availability, but it also maps neatly to larger advertising budgets. That's just the simple truth. In the Wine Enthusiast and the way those lists are generated, there is certainly no pressure or suggestion of any kind made to the writers or reviewers of what we should review or how we should review these wines. Throughout the year, I taste hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of wines from Washington, and I send in the reviews. And those reviews are published as written and scored as scored, and there is no I'm the guy for those reviews, and nobody is tampering with them in any way. Now, when they get around to picking their top 100 on the different lists, they factor in a lot of different kinds of equations, and quite honestly, that happens in the home office, and I'm not there.
Right. I think one thing, I like to pick on rating systems. I have to admit I do, simply because I've seen all sides of this. You know, from being a judge to being a taster to being on the wholesale end, and obviously, more importantly, on the consumer end. As I talk to consumers and I get out in the market, I think people are thrilled to know what everyone has to say are the top 100, whether it's enthusiast, whether it's spectator, whether it's advocate, whoever is rating all their great list. But I think a lot of times that we overlook the fact that even though the wines are exceptional, it does me absolutely no good if I can't find that wine. You know, I think it's wonderful whether, you know, we get some great Burgundies that score 100 points, or we get something from St. Emilion that we don't see in the States. I appreciate the accessibility of that number one wine. What do you think of that?
Well, it's not accessible is the problem. That particular number one wine was the 2005 Reserve. That sold out months and months ago.
Right.
Columbia Crest makes a lot of different wines at four different tiers. They have the two vines, which is the cheaper. They have the Grand Estates, which is usually around $10 a bottle. They have the Triple H tier of wines, and then they have the reserves. And this was a reserve, and those are the most limited and the more expensive. So that specific wine, along with most of the wines on the Spectator's Top 100, are long gone, and that's forgivable because these are a look back at the year.
Right.
And that's all they're intended to be. This is not to say go out and buy these wines, although anything that's still kicking around in somebody's warehouse and makes it to one of these lists, you better believe they're going to be selling it like hotcakes. I'm getting emails from retailers daily that say we still have the number 72 and you better hurry.
Trust me, I understand. I sold out in 3 hours with an advance lead of this.
There you go.
It's always fun to talk to someone, especially with your background. But overall, we wanted to get your impression on the idea of having a Washington State as a number one wine. Whether you think it merited it or not, does this do a lot for your book and for Washington?
Well, it does a lot for Washington, and there's no question that the quality is here in this state, as I've said for years, but it still is a message that has not reached the four corners of the country, never mind the rest of the world. And I think this helps tremendously.
Well, we certainly hope so. Well, Paul, thank you for coming on The Crush and giving your 2 cents worth in. It's always fun to have an expert on the show, and you are definitely my Washington State expert. So until next time, and until we see your top 100, we're looking forward to chatting with you again.
Well, thank you, Laura, and by all means, log in to PaulGregutt.com and keep an eye on Washington.
We most certainly shall. All right, we have to take a small break here at The Crush, but more entertainment when we return.